Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco here from Macabre Daily, and I'm joined by my lovely editor of Paper Cuts, Sean O'Connor. Sean, how are you?
Oh, doing great tonight. So excited to talk to Joe.
Yes, yes, and we are not alone. We are here with none other than, and I feel like I would list off all of the different titles you've held, Joe, but I'm just going to
We don't have enough
encapsulate some
time.
of them, yeah, into
Yes, I
just
know. I've made it very
filmmaker.
annoying to give my bio. Even when I have to write it, I'm like, oh my God, what do I pick? I mean,
I mean, it's a good thing, right? It just means that you keep yourself busy. But we have Joe Swanberg here, who is an actor, producer, writer, director, overall filmmaker. And he is here representing just a couple of films he's produced recently. One of them is Kenneled, which is out and out on Screenbox. The other one is Monkey's Magic Merry-Go-Round, which is heading to Screenbox on the 19th. And then a couple other films we'll talk about a little bit later. Thinking and Yellow Eyes, which will be hitting the streamer as well in the coming weeks, months. So, Joe, thank you so much for making the time to speak with us today.
anytime. Thank you for having me.
Well, I know you're a busy man. You've got lots of things to do, so I'm going to jump right into some questions for you. The first one of which is, you've been in the film industry, if we will, for quite some time, over 20 years. It looks like now. We just go off IMDb records.
Yeah.
But I'm more curious to understand a little about your history with horror films in particular. So, what is your kind of personal connection and history with the genre?
Sure. Well, okay, at a fifth grade sleepover, I grew up in Georgia and Alabama, sort of, through my formative years, and video stores there used to be connected to pizza places. So when we would have sleepovers and stuff, you would order pizza and then you could also ask for movies and they would deliver the VHSs with the pizza.
Oh, that's cool.
And I know. So as young people, we could get R-rated movies because you were not physically in the store. They didn't know who is like someone's dad would call to rent the movies. And so somebody rented Evil Dead 2 at one of these fifth grade sleepovers. And I had never seen anything like it. I mean, I just completely, the movie scared the shit out of me, but also I was so intrigued by it. I mean, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I was sort of from a young age like, oh, I think I do like horror movies. I mean, they're terrifying, but also something's going on there that I'm really attracted to. And then in high school, when I really, started to get serious about wanting to be a filmmaker and get really into movies, I got a job at Hollywood Video like the day I turned 16 and just started devouring everything, including horror movies, and the horror movies were almost like the most useful because especially like the trauma movies, which I really loved at the time,
Uh,
you could sort of see the seams, as a young aspiring filmmaker. They're almost like film school. Like you can kind of watch them and be like, oh, that's how they did that. They didn't quite pull off the trick. You sort of see the mechanism or something. And so, I went into film school as a pretty like pretentious artiste, aspiring young person. I was very into Tarantino and Kevin Smith and Hal Hartley and Jim Jarmusch and Spike Lee, sort of 80s no wave New York filmmakers. Um, and then when I got out of film school and started making my own, sort of dramatic indie films, I went to South by Southwest with my first feature and I met Ty West there. And, he and I just really connected on a filmmaking sort of front. He was there with a movie called The Roost, and I was there with Kissing on the Mouth. These two movies have nothing in. Right away we started talking about similar reference points, filmmakers we loved, and he had kind of come up in the Larry Fessenden world. He was connected to
yeah.
Larry and sort of knew the New York indie people, and I knew Larry through Habit, his film Habit, but had never met him or anything like that. And um, so as Ty and I sort of stayed close, that was kind of one tendril that pulled me deeper into the horror community. And then I got to know Larry through Ty and I made those connections. And then Adam Wingard was kind of the other tendril. I met Adam when I had a movie called Hannah Takes the Stairs, and he had a movie called Pop Skull that were playing around the circuit at the same time. And he also sort of asked me to act in some of his stuff, and he came up to Chicago and DP'd some of my stuff. And sort of through my connection to those guys, I ended up in Your Next and being involved with VHS and some of those kinds of movies. So, I've always been a fan of horror, but I feel really grateful that kind of through my filmmaker friends, I have actually been able to participate in that world and, kind of act and direct in that stuff. And then Roger Corman was sort of the other big influence through my whole life. I really admired Roger Corman, and this horror slate that I produced was very, very inspired by Roger Corman, me sort of wanting to play Roger Corman for 6 months.
That's great. That's good company that you had back then. That's for sure.
Yes, I know. My God. I mean, I think about it now. I'm just like, holy shit, so lucky to end up like buddies with Ty and Adam. It's crazy.
It's kismet.
And he ended up being, EP on Depraved for Larry. So, I mean, I think it's
absolutely. Yeah, Larry is a hero. I mean, I love him, and I acted in Blackout. I have a very small role in the movie, but and then Larry's acted in some of my stuff too, so yeah, he's always been a godfather figure, really very, very generous. I mean, really just screwed up young filmmakers. So I've always tried to emulate his energy and attitude. I really admired it, and I would love it if I could contribute the way that he's contributed.
Yeah, he is the Roger Corman of New York independent horror filmmaking.
For sure.
Yeah,
As
he
far as
really
I'm
is.
concerned.
Yeah. He's transcended into like, a cottage industry. And he's also, his personality just comes through in everything. So he's just kind of this horror renaissance man now.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
really is like larger than life. And I love that, because we kind of lost that for a minute, the William Castles, the Roger Cormans, but Larry is absolutely filling that void.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think he's a legend. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be grateful and bragging about my association with him for the rest of my life, for sure.
Well, this is good, because now we're going to brag about our association with you. So domino theory.
Yeah, perfect. You're 1 degree from Larry. Do you guys know Larry?
No, not personally. So
know.
we're kind of like we circle the same atmosphere, if that makes any sense. And so we end up doing a lot of work with like Larry and kind of Larry friends adjacent. Like we just had Jordan Gaspare on our podcast, who's producing Tales from the Pale or Tales Beyond the Pale.
Yeah.
And she's done a lot of work with Larry on the podcasting front. So
Cool.
I think it's one of those, like, I've met him personally. Like I've met him at Comic-Con before, but like it's not one of those like really deep connections. It's like, oh, Larry Fessenden remembers who I am. It's more like Larry Fessenden signed my Larry Fessenden collection Blu-ray that I did this time.
Yeah.
I know. I want him to sign mine. When I opened my video store in Chicago, he sent me like a really cool box with some of the old titles on VHS, and like River of Grass, Kelly Reichardt's movie that he's in, and
wow.
A VHS of Habit and some other cool stuff. I was like, damn, Larry is the shit, man.
Well, you just dropped a weird, like an awesome little nugget right there, that you have a video store. So is this a still in function video store?
Yeah,
in Chicago?
I mean, I've been shut down a couple times over the years. It's like I sort of this little gypsy VHS collection. It's currently in its 4th spot, and I opened it in the back of a pizza place in 2021, and I was doing like screenings up on their rooftop. This was still COVID, it was sort of like easier to get people together to watch movies outdoors at the time, and this pizza place had like a great little rooftop, and then we got shut down by the city of Chicago. They were like, you're a pizza place, you don't have a license to be a video store. I was like, there's a license to be a video store in 2021?
Oh, no.
Like, what the there hasn't been a new video store in Chicago for like 15 years. What are you talking about?
Sounds like a made up.
So I moved it a couple doors down to my storefront, and then I got busted there twice, and I had to go to court, and it was like a whole thing. And then Ryan Graveface, who runs TerraVision, he had acquired an old video store collection here in Chicago. So, we started talking about partnering. And so we did a little pop-up version of it next door to the Music Box Theater from April to October last year.
Oh, that's great.
And then it moved over to the Davis Theater, which is in my neighborhood. So I do programming there. Like I show movies at the Davis on Monday nights, and the video store is like totally up and running. You can rent movies, VHS, Blu-ray, and DVD. And I also have my own little VHS label. You can see my duplicating machines.
Yeah, I can see that.
Back here.
Yeah. We'll blast the past right there.
That's 15 VHS or VCRs plus, so that I can make like 15 tapes at a time. And I do little runs of like new American indie films. Like I'll just do like 25 or 50 tapes, like really small runs. But I'm putting out like a a movie a month or something.
Wow.
All
I
right,
mean,
I
do you
have
want to
to
bring?
ask.
Yeah, go
Well,
ahead,
I'm
Sean.
sorry, Matt. I have to ask. Okay, so what's the crown jewel in your collection? Like, what is just the
Oh, and
apex?
my personal connection?
Yeah.
I've got some cool old like Richard Kern tapes from the 80s, like original, Xerox VHS. I'm trying to think what else I have that's like super precious. I have a lot of one-offs. Like my most precious tapes are the things that people like made for the store. Drag City Records here in Chicago put together a VHS with like all of their music videos that they've
Oh,
ever released with their artists. And that's like a one of a kind tape that they made for me just for the store. Like a lot of cool stuff like that that I'm really sentimental about and sort of protective of. I mean, people can come in and rent it, but I would be heartbroken if it went missing.
yeah. If it didn't come back, oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah, good on you for trusting people with your physical media collection, because
I
I
can't
used to
believe you
have
let that
all
go.
of mine like exposed when
Yeah,
I was in
yeah.
college, and then I'd throw parties and realize that I'm missing like copies of things. I'm like, damn it. So now I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, everyone, if you're gonna check something out, like I'm gonna need, a copy of your blood,
Yeah, library
and
card.
social security card, just for safekeeping, just in case. But
Yes, yes.
is it safe to say that some of the films you've been producing, like that they'll end up in this kind of short limited run VHS
Oh
releases?
yeah, hopefully as long as we can figure the rights out. Yeah, but definitely. I mean, I'm trying to put out stuff that's like, on the festival circuit right now or, new releases. I really want to do a tape with the Addams Family, like
Oh yeah.
their film Hellbender. Like I really want to do a tape of that, trying to figure that out with Shudder um and then a lot of the stuff is movies that the filmmakers still control their rights to, new indie films that don't even have distribution yet because they're still like on the festival circuit or um so that's kind of the space that I'm playing in, and it's not horror centric or anything. Like I have done a couple horror films, but I've also just done art house movies and
Sure.
other things like that.
How do you choose, Joe? How do you choose what you're going to get involved in? Because you do so much.
Yeah, I try and say yes to things in general. I mean, I love game and I love all aspects of it. So when people ask me to act, you know, if it's not too rough on my schedule or anything like that, I usually try and say yes, even if I don't know the filmmaker or don't really know the project. And with directing, it's a lot more. I'm a lot more deliberate about it. I usually am developing stuff for myself, writing my own
Yeah.
movies, and then projects come together when the momentum gets, going enough to get it done. And then on the producing front, I think it's a combo of filmmakers that I'm inspired by. Like Mickey Keating, I acted in a film of his called Off Season, and then I just liked working with him so much, and I was so impressed by him that I wanted to produce his next film. So we built that movie Invader to shoot here in Chicago. That was sort of a prototype for the horror slate that Kenneled and Monkey are part of. Like Mickey Keating's movie Invader was the first attempt at doing sort of low budget 12-day shoot, very small crew, very nimble, um single location, not totally single location, but sort of built around a location. A lot of the old Roger Corman kind of techniques to
Hmm.
shoot fast and sort of work on that indie scale. So that's how I got involved with that. And then Alex Ross Perry and Lynn Shelton and Zach Clark and some other filmmakers who I've produced for multiple times are just people that I'm a fan of, and um I've either known them a long time and worked with them in various capacities, or um that I've met them along the way at the festival circuit or something like that. So um and Josephine Decker is another filmmaker that we kind of got involved with, who obviously I've worked with in multiple capacities over the years. And so that stuff just kind of comes along either because I hear they're working on a project that I think I can help, push it a little further down the field, or for a period of time, I had a finance company with Eddie Linker, and we were not really that heavily hands-on involved with films, but we were just helping finance. And so, you know, there's just a lot of different capacities. Some of them take more of my time and some take less. So, you know, if I can help, I'm almost always down to be involved in some capacity, but other times I'm really like deeply invested in a project and on set all the time and very, you know, very hands-on producer. So with the horror slate movies, those were ones that I was like very, very actively involved in building from the ground up, and I was on set every day, and those I really was like a full-on producer on. And then sometimes you see my name as a producer on something, and the truth is I just sent a few emails or helped them get some money or something, you know. It's like a vanity title or something.
Look, I'll throw you some accolades. You're an incredible writer, incredible director, incredible producer. But I think your magic skill is you surround yourself with these fantastic people.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, definitely.
that's the through line of our conversation tonight. Is you really are in great company.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I mean, a lot of it is the luck of the timing. Like that first year at South by Southwest in 2005, I met Ty West, the Duplass brothers, David Lowery and James M. Johnston, Yen Tan, Brian Poiser, Spencer Parsons. I mean, that's just luck, you know.
Yeah.
You cannot, that's just a stacked year where there's just an insane amount of talent that had their first features at South by that year. You know, it's crazy. I mean, totally crazy. So that one, I'm like, I just am grateful I was there. You know, it's like not through no strategy or real skill on my part. You know, I got invited, I went, and then I sort of had the like craziest week of my life. And then, you know, after that, it was sort of through those, it tends to be the case. Like if you hang out with really good, talented people, you meet other really good, talented people. You know, it's kind of like, I felt like I just got lucky by just kind of like hanging with those guys, and then through them meeting, you know, a bunch of other people that also ended up being important in my life. Or, and then, you know, I trust my gut. Like if I like somebody's work, you know, it's kind of like, whether it's low budget or whether it does well or doesn't do well or whatever, I kind of just have to, you know, my own pace to the radar and sort of say like, well, you really love it, so you know, get involved in helping them make a next movie or cast them in something of yours, or you know, sort of form those connections and start working together. Because I'm, you know, I improvise my movies, and most of my personal films are very small, and you know, they kind of required a certain type of mindset and energy. And so it's also, you know, my feelers are out for the kind of filmmakers and collaborators who are down to be passion driven and kind of show up to make something without a lot of resources, you know.
Yeah.
Those early movies, it's not like they were a job where people were like collecting a paycheck or something, you know. It was almost like everybody was sleeping on the floor in a, like Hannah Takes the Stairs, you know, it's like 7 of us sleeping in a 2-bedroom apartment. Like we gave Greta 1 bedroom and we gave Rye the other bedroom, and then the 5 guys just like slept on a futon or on sleeping bags on the floor for a month, you know. It's
Yeah,
like
gladiator school.
totally.
Yeah.
So in those kinds of environments, like, you know, nobody's sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, Greta's definitely going to become like a massive star and whatever, you know. It's like we're more sort of like, I think we have enough money to buy lunch tomorrow, so you know, how's everybody feeling? Who's not hungry? You know, we can save that money for the next day. And you know, just kind of like working with people who go in with that kind of energy and passion, you know, you do kind of, you feel like you're in special company. Like, and also those people have a very particular skill set that, you know, sends them on to really cool careers, because you're really emboldened when you've done a film for no money at all. You know, it's like, then when you get a little bit of money, you're kind of like, oh, I could solve all my problems now. You know, this is like, feels like an epic at this point. You know, we've got
Well,
$30,000. Oh my God, it's so much money.
we're gonna make it. Let me ask you a question.
Exactly.
This is very selfish, by the way, for both myself and Matt, because you mentioned something that you say yes, which I believe in as well, and so does Matt. And we say yes all the time, but we often find ourselves so far over our skis. What do
Mhm.
you do when you get in that situation to really expand your bandwidth and be able to tackle all those projects? I'm going to take notes because I still haven't figured it out.
Yeah. I don't know that there, I mean, that certainly happens to me often, that I'm overwhelmed from agreeing to things that at the time feel like, oh, that's like 3 weeks away and I'll have a ton of time, you know, nothing on my calendar right now. And then the thing arrives and I'm like, oh my
Yeah, then
God,
you're like, shit, it's Thursday.
it's
Oh
a
no.
terrible week to
Yeah.
like go help this person out. You know, like if I had known, there's no way I would have agreed to this. So in those cases, you know, I just sort of have to try and remind myself, just because I'm not busy right now doesn't mean I won't be busy in 2 weeks, and not, you know, sort of overbook, drastically overbook. But I also just think that I built a pace early on in my life that I've been able to sustain because it's sort of normalized. But, you know, in those old days, I was just cranking stuff out constantly. I mean, I really was never not engaged in, you know, some phase of a production on my own work, and then often helping other people. And I've just tried to sort of remind myself when I'm feeling overwhelmed, like, this is the life that you wanted, you know, this is actually like the dream
Yeah.
that you had when you were young, that you would be like busy and involved in these cool artistic communities, and that young people would be seeking you out for your help and, you know, mentorship and all this sort of stuff. Like, so it's like easier to like muscle through the day when you're grateful and, you know, sort of just surfing a wave where you're kind of like, all right, this is cool. And maybe someday no one will be talking to you or want your help. And that's when you can catch up on all your personal projects that you've delayed and, you know, pushed off or whatever else. So I try and just stay busy while the busyness is there. And then, you know, life also does grant me some nice downtimes. You know, there's like certain parts of the year and certain cycles in the film festival season and things like that where I'm kind of like, oh, okay, actually this is like the perfect time now to sort of catch up on a bunch
Yeah,
of
you get to
stuff
breathe a little bit.
I shoved into the background like last year or something. So it's worked out kind of nicely. And also I have kids now, so I'm like a stay-at-home dad half the time and then a filmmaker half the time. So that kind of moderates my pace. And I can only, you know, on the weeks that I have my kids, I can only do so much because I'm waking up in the morning and making lunches and getting them off to school and doing after school programs and carpools. And so it's kind of nice. Like I kind of reset, I sleep more, I stay home more, you know, I'm kind of quieter
It's a
on
nice balance.
alternating weeks. And
Yeah.
then when my ex-wife has the kids, I'm sort of like, okay, cool. I'm on my own insane schedule this week. I can stay up till 3 in the morning. I can sleep in tomorrow. You know, I can pack a bunch of stuff in. So that's also helpful.
Yeah,
Good.
you know, it's a great question. I think like so many of us kind of exist in that tension, that moment of tension between the things that I have to do and the things that haven't come up yet. So I'm right there with you. And you know, it's interesting you mentioned your experience at South by Southwest in 2005, because that festival now is got to be almost incomparable to what it was in 2005 in just in sheer size and scope.
Yeah, yeah.
But also film festivals at large have become almost like mini Coachellas. Like they've become a place to go
Yeah.
and hang out, not so much a place for industry folks to, you know, start looking for new projects to fund or produce. What have been some of the most dramatic changes that you've observed kind of being close to the film festival circuit all these years? And what makes you hopeful for where it's going?
Well, I'll sort of lead with the second part because I am actually extremely hopeful. Not even hopeful, I'm optimistic, and I'm seeing with my own eyes that there is even hungrier and more exciting landscape right now for younger filmmakers. And there are festivals like Fantasia, like New Next, um, like Sidewalk in Birmingham, you know, a lot of places that have, you know, long been championing smaller work, newer work, more boundary pushing work. And um, the cyclical nature that I've been able to witness over the 20 years that I've been involved is kind of like, you know, some piece of technology comes along that the studios and bigger films are dubious of, and then the independent films are sort of the first to step into that space and take advantage of or experiment in those new spaces. So you know, as DVD sort of started dying a slow death at the very beginning of my career, like my first two films got distribution through small DVD companies. And then streaming came along and suddenly there was a lot of money, sort of an interesting new, and VOD in 2007 was kind of this space where IFC and some other distributors were starting to experiment with, well, what if we made the film available to rent the same day it was in movie theaters, and, sort of consolidating the windows and things like that. But, it's sort of smaller independent films that they tried that with first, and then the studios kind of witnessed the success of that and slowly moved in that direction. And then streaming also in the early days was very, very open to independent stuff. And so I feel that the changes are, they're all different from each other, but they sort of follow the same pattern. So that's been kind of one observation. But I think right now we're kind of waiting for that next technology. And weirdly, that next technology might be the movie theater. I mean, even though it's not new technology, it does not mean that theatrical as a distribution, as a prioritized distribution platform could not be the next wave again. And obviously, independent distributors and independent filmmakers are starting to self-book. And, the old model of the week-long run does not necessarily have to be how you release your film. I think a lot of filmmakers are embracing one-off screenings in cities and, sort of touring and traveling with movies like that. So, so I've always stayed optimistic. I just think you have to approach the industry with a open mind and recognize that, shifts are good. They're healthy. Like, nobody wants to be in a stagnant landscape for 20 years with no new energy or no fresh channels opening up. But it is a little disconcerting sometimes, and global economic trends and things also highly affect the film industry. So when we're in recessions and economic downturns, it's just a lot harder to get films financed. But then there's flip side to all of it. When it's harder to get films financed, it means there's less in the marketplace, which means it might be easier to sell the films that you do finish. So I've tried to just kind of keep an even keeled approach to it, an aspect to it, focus on quality. People always want good movies, and there's always a market for those, not getting cynical about the work and things like that. But I I noticed a shift towards social media and self promotion and self presentation, obviously, over these 20 years, like from 2005, where MySpace was not even really on the landscape. YouTube had not been invented yet. I mean, it's crazy to think that that was only 20
Yeah.
years ago. But
Yeah.
the biggest change is that, at the beginning of my filmmaking career, I had to sit at my computer and burn DVDs and then go to the post office and mail those DVDs to film festivals, to critics, to whoever wanted to watch the movie. And incredibly time consuming, very labor intensive. And now, I can just put a Vimeo link on and send it to, 40 people with one email. I mean, so it has gotten a lot easier. Also, the quality of the cameras is 1,000 times better than they were in 2005. But what's funny is now I'm seeing young people shooting mini DV for the aesthetic look. It's kind of like, in a weird way, we always just go back and grab these antiquated formats, and the look of nostalgia becomes important, but it's like that look changes. So when I was a young filmmaker, we were like, oh, it'd be really cool to shoot on Super 8 and like incorporate some Super 8 footage, because to us that looked like our parents' generation. And
Yeah.
but now it's like mini DV's 25 years old. It's sort of like that looks like that. So it's really fun. It's kind of like interesting to be. I'm 44 years old now. Like, I still feel relatively young. I still feel, whatever. I'm still finding my feet in the industry. I was just mostly in the indie space. It's not like I'm some old grizzled Hollywood vet or something like that. But whenever I talk to young filmmakers, I just say, man, you guys are so lucky. I mean, who cares that the economy sucks and that you might not make money from your independent film this year? We didn't make money from our independent films in 2005. None of
Yeah.
us sold those movies or became rich or famous off those movies. Like, we were grateful they played some film festivals. People were shitting on mumblecore and being like, what is this new thing? Like, these movies suck. They look terrible. They're shot on terrible video cameras. Like, now it's easy to look back and think, oh, so many of those people went on to these huge careers. But, you know, that year we were all in our early to mid 20s and just kind of kicking around the festival circuit, like working day jobs, professional filmmaker yet. So I try and tell these young filmmakers when they get frustrated or they're kind of like, I don't get it. Like my movie got into Sundance and I didn't even get a distribution deal. I'm kind of like, okay, take a breath and relax. Like the amount of technology you have access to is, we would have killed to be able to use the tools that are just free for you right now, basically. Like even your iPhone has such a better camera on it than the best camera we could have shot
Right?
our movie with at the time. So, you know, I'm pretty like positive. I think that, you know, the real goal of the independent community should be increased access so that no one out there who has a great movie in them is being stopped simply by logistics, you know? And right now, I think it's the greatest time ever. If you have a story to tell, I mean, I'm sorry, but there are no barriers to entry at this point. I mean, you can absolutely go make that movie for no money with your friends and have it look really good, cut it on editing software for free. You know, I mean, it's really a great time to be a storyteller and a filmmaker. So, you know, hopefully, the next technology or whatever sort of thing that comes along and economically kind of catches everybody and moves that next wave is, you know, something that's like right under our noses right now. But in general, I do think that the shifts have almost always been towards the positive nature of making films easier to make and more accessible for people.
Nice.
Well, I mean, I think the democratization of access is always going to be like, you know, the breaking down of barriers also creates new ones, so to speak.
Yes,
So it's like now we have
100%.
more content than we ever did before.
Yep. Yep.
But I think you're right that in terms of the tooling, there's very little to stand in someone's way now if they wanted to go and make the thing. Will it be the best thing that's ever been made? Probably not. But like, that's not the point. You know, you don't make the Sistine Chapel on your first try. You know, like
100%. I
works.
don't even think it should be the goal. I mean, I really try and remind filmmakers when I talk to them, you know, my breakout was Drinking Buddies in 2013, and that is my 14th feature film. And it doesn't matter that I made 13 movies before that. Nobody didn't go see Drinking Buddies because they didn't like that it was my 14th movie. You know, for a lot of the audience, that's the first time they ever heard of me. You know,
Right.
every film was preparation for that. Everything that I made up to that point was practice. You know, it's all. And I just try and remind young filmmakers, like, your goal of your first feature should just be to, you know, challenge yourself, try and make something original, try and find your voice. Like, do not put so much pressure on yourself to have to make a masterpiece the first time out. And in fact, if you know, if you like my career and you think it's cool what I've accomplished, then remind yourself you get 14 swings before it even matters. Like, you know, it's cool. Like you should just be making sure you're getting better each time. That's the only thing you can do. And the audience will catch up with it. They won't catch up with it, you know. And if you're passion driven, it's not like those years were not difficult for me. You know, we were broke for many of those years. You know, my life was almost like I would be, you know, some film festival in some foreign country would buy my flight. I'd go on an airplane. I'd be put up in a really fancy hotel in some cool city in Europe and could not afford to even buy fast food. You know, basically I was like living off of filmmaker events where we were like stealing hors d'oeuvres off trays and trying to like drink for free, you know, and years of that. And, you know, it's stressful sometimes. It's hard to be broke, you know. It's a challenge to
Yeah.
be creative when you're waking up in the morning and going like, shit, man, I really do not know where rent is coming from next month. Like, I have not figured that out, and it's the middle of the month already. Like, Jesus. But, you know, at the same time, those were some of the best years of my life. I mean, really, the stress and the trade-off of finally being part of an artistic community and starting to get my work out there and all of that. And, you know, young filmmakers never want to hear it, but, you know, I'm kind of like, you ought to grind for like a decade first before things really start happening for your career. Through the majority of the film industry, that's the case. And certainly if you go back to, you know, the Corman School and John Sayles and Joe Dante and Paul Bartel and all these great filmmakers coming out of that Corman era, you know, these guys were hustling. They were cutting trailers for Corman. They were, you know, ADing on other people's films. Like a lot of work before they got a swing at their own first stuff. They might have been young, but they put years and years and years of labor into it. And like I'm reading Crumb's biography, Dan Nadell's Crumb biography right now. He's like, Crumb is probably my favorite artist of all time. And you know, he sort of breaks out when he's in his early 20s or maybe mid 20s, and it seems like this phenom out of nowhere. But you know, you go look at his early career, that guy was drawing incessantly and compulsively from like, you know, his from 9 years old to 25 or something. So, you know, you kind of look at him and you're like, well, whatever, like he just kind of right out of the gate had all these huge cultural impacts or whatever. It's like, no, you're not thinking about the 15 years of grueling education he had, you know, all that work. It's like you shouldn't escape it. I don't even think a filmmaker should wish to escape it. You know, it's kind of like that's where you find your voice. That's where you build your chops. That's where you know, really like get the bad ideas out of your system and, you know, sort of meet your collaborators and all of that. So whenever I see younger filmmakers kind of have like a huge hit early in their career or something, I'm happy for them, but I'm also like, they're being robbed a little bit of the good grind, you know, the kind of healthy version of the grind that, you know, maybe turns you into a more sustaining, you know, career filmmaker or something. And Altman, who was always like one of my big filmmaking heroes, you know, he was doing industrials in Kansas City and then came to Hollywood and was, you know, jamming out 2-day episodes of mediocre television. And then when he finally does MASH, you know, he's like 40 years old or 45 years old or something. One of my all-time favorite films is Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. Like Paul Mazursky sort of was grinding on comedy TV shows at the time, you know, live variety shows and things like that. And then he makes his first feature at 40 years old. You know, that this youth obsession and this idea that, you know, you've got to be like 23 years old, film school, and you got to have your big first hit. You know, it's kind of like, I don't know, this older version of kind of apprenticing and figuring it out and just, you know, working with cool people and all of that. There's a lot of value to that. So I just think, you know, the glut of stuff, which I do agree with you, Matt, like there is just, you know, the democratization does lead then to there being a problem on the other side, which is how do I escape this sea of content and
Right.
all of this stuff? But, you know, it's kind of like you'll escape it by, you know, 10 years of hard work. You know, you don't need to like get out of it immediately with your first feature. And so, but you know, whatever, young people are anxious and excited and hungry, and they never want to hear that. You know, I stare into a lot of blank faces of, you know, film school kids are kind of like, what would your advice be to us? And I'd be like, all right, well, you know, the advice is like, this is gonna suck for the next decade.
Yeah, you're like grind for a decade, and they're like,
Yeah.
what?
They're like, that's not what I wanted to hear.
Well, it's hard advice to take in the sense that like you have to, it's almost like when you tell people like, you know, it's like giving relationship advice. It's so much easier to give advice that we don't take ourselves to other people. And I think that if someone were to tell you, like, you know, if you were to tell yourself like, hey, you're going to suffer for like an undesignated amount of time before eventually something good happens in your life.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, fuck that. Like, you'd be like, you know, but I think that you're right. Like there is so much that gets learned through the process of not having access to everything.
Yep.
And you know, it is like I there's recently like I've seen like some folks are wanting to make their films and their shorts, they're crowdfunding to do this, and it's kind of made me realize like if you've never made something before, you should not be asking anybody for any money to make it. You should just go make it.
Then, that was always my attitude. I was always a little like skeptical of these big Kickstarter campaigns for first features where I was kind of like, I don't know, man.
You gotta go through it first.
I love that you can do that, but also I do feel a little like, why don't you put it on a credit card and, you know, work a second weekend job or something? Like if you really, really want to make it, like task yourself with figuring that out. And also if your first feature like has to be $200,000 or else you can't do it, I'm a little like, I don't know. I can point you to a lot of filmmakers who figured this out for 5 or 10 grand the first time out. Like, I don't know that you have to have all those toys.
Also, that's like 5 movies right there. Like that is the budget of 5 feature-length independent films that
Yeah.
have from folks who've made a feature before and know like, hey, all I need is 10 grand for these like 5 effect shots. The
Yep.
actors are my friends. Like this is, and I think that, so much of what's been exciting, I think to your optimism point is this, that we are seeing so much of an explosion of younger filmmakers, um, and but also just an explosion of ideas, and kind of trying to bring this all the way back to kind of Kenneled and Monkey's Magic Merry-Go-Round. What was it about those ideas or those pitches that when you either heard them or saw them, you're like, okay, this is something I want to put my name
Mhm.
behind.
Well, Monkey was first, so that was as I was putting the slate together, I sort of had the the Corman idea of like let's grind it out. I had also been working in TV. I'd done a Netflix series called Easy, and I had also done director for hire work on other shows. And I loved the lack of preciousness of television. It's like you got to move fast. Your schedule is already built. I mean, it is go, go, go.
Yeah.
Not a lot of room for things to fall behind or add days or anything like that. And so after, 3 seasons of doing my own TV series and being addicted to that pace of television, I was like, we should do indie films like a season of TV. And TV rotates directors. It's already sort of built this model where I thought, man, if I could get the same crew to kind of work across 4 or 5 movies and trade directors and cinematographers each movie, or even swap cinematographers the way a lot of TV does, where there's kind of like A and B DPs who shoot alternating episodes. So I started to really like mull on this concept, and then try and figure out how to put it together. What kind of money am I looking for if I want to do 5 movies at a time? What kind of schedule could I build? If I'm going to produce all 5 of them, like how am I going to do this? Just time wise and logistics wise, without cutting the movies short or burning out before the end of it,
Right.
things like that. And then, so I spent like, a lot of the first year that I had this idea for this project, just sort of mulling on what it looked like, how to fundraise for it, and also how to even do it. Like, what would my game plan be? And then when we were ready to do it and had the money in place, Monkey's Magic Merry-Go-Round, the script came to me. And not only did I really like it, but I also thought, okay, working with puppets is a cool new challenge that I've never done before. That sounds like a really neat, just experience to have, to try and, figure out how to shoot that. I loved that it all took place in one location on the set of a children's television show. So I thought, okay, this is neat. We can do a really good job building our central location, put a lot of time, energy, and some of our budget into that, and then we can just go there every day and really be creative. It sort of removes the often overwhelming company move kind of energy from independent films, because that's how you burn like a lot of energy and time, is moving locations. You got to unload all the equipment in the one location, repack it up, move, unload it again, repack it up again, move. Days and days of that are not undoable, and certainly I've done them myself, but man, is it exhausting. You really just, at the end of those days, you're kind of like, oh, I can't believe we have another 3 locations tomorrow. Like, just kill me. Um, so the one location, I was like, okay, great. I mean, if we can build this set and leave it standing, I mean, this is like pure creativity. We just get to go to work every day and just focus on the acting, just focus on the cinematography, like all the things that are actually fun and creative. So that one kind of fell into place first, and then Kenneled we were prepping Kenneled the day we wrapped Monkey. It sort of rolled right into um, production in that way, and that was sort of born out of a desire to work with Jay Burleson, who directed Kenneled. His attitude really impressed me when I talked to him. Just the the version of him that seemed hungry, open to the experiment that I was doing, um, savvy in terms of the films that he had made and doing them for small budgets, and putting, I thought, his energy in the right places and things like that. And then the script from HK Moore came in through like a round of meetings that I was doing with writers. And from the very beginning, I just loved the pitch for it. You know, I sort of thought, I mean, I guess I'm always like attracted to working class characters and stories about characters who are forced into compromising situations because they need money. I think that there is something inherently horrific and tense about those relationships, and I think it's very relatable. I think a lot of people have taken jobs that they don't actually want to do, but they're kind of like, okay, I guess, you know, in a dream world, this is not what I would be doing right now, but my options are limited, and this is the, you know, best paying, smartest thing I could do. And so that appealed to me, that sort of central character, and the premise that he takes this kind of freaky job and is, you know, attracted by the high pay while simultaneously being a little skeeved out by the work itself, but being intrigued and sort of allowing that intrigue to draw him further into that world. So so those were the first two that we did, and you know, I was building those projects 2 months before we started shooting. And with Monkey, it was just a really thrilling experience to dive into Chicago's puppet community, which I didn't realize it was as large and vibrant as it was. I've lived in Chicago for, you know, over 20 years and had not really ever crossed paths with this world, but we have a big puppet festival every year here in Chicago. There are a lot of like very cool world-class puppet makers and puppeteers here. So that was neat. I mean, really a very, very fun experience, and meeting puppeteers and voice actors and people like that. And then the film stars Michael Gillio, who I've known for a long time. He made a really important Chicago indie film called Quick Stop, which came out in 2005, maybe. So, you know, when I was at the very beginning of my career, Michael was someone who done this feature that Roger Ebert had really loved, and the film had played at a lot of really prestigious festivals. And so I met him when I was in my early 20s, before I had even really begun my own career. And then I got an email from him in 2021 that he had moved back to Chicago, and he had been out in LA, you know, as a professional screenwriter and actor for a long time. And so we reconnected, and you know, he had sort of wound down his acting career. Like, he wrote the Dungeons and Dragons film with Hugh Grant that was in theaters a couple summers ago. Like, he had become a big Hollywood screenwriter, and had sort of retired from acting a little bit. And so when I read the script for Monkey, and we needed a kind of Mr. Rogers type character, or a sort of host of this TV show, I thought, man, I wonder if Michael would throw his hat back in the ring and sort of think about it. So I just approached him as a friend first, and I said, you know, there's this really talented young filmmakers. Aidan Leary is the director of Monkey, and C.R. Thompson, who wrote the film Caleb. He, you know, just so much enthusiasm. I really just loved the energy that they both brought to the project, and to tell that they were a dream version of the type of filmmakers I wanted to work with. They were young. They had come out of film school like a year or two earlier, and their passion and their hunger really inspired me every single day. You know, it's like, if you can catch that energy, I mean, it's not like I was like a super old man or something like that, but you know, I'd been doing this job for a long time, and in a lot of ways I was sort of like, maybe I'm retired as a director, and you know, I'll just sort of produce for younger filmmakers. It's like working on this horror slate and working with these, now I have two new features of my own, because I got so inspired by being around them all the time and sort of within this energy. So I pitched that to Michael Gillio, and I was kind of like, give it a chance. Like, you know, I know that acting is not your main thing anymore, but you know, I really think these kids are talented, and I really think the script is cool. And so he read it, and then he self-taped, and we were just blown away. I mean, his audition was so good. So I called him, and I was like, I really think you should do it. I mean, you know, I know it's a lot. You're sort of in every frame of the movie, and it's a 12-day shoot. You know, it's a very, very indie project, but you know, I think they would benefit a lot from your experience as a director and a writer. You know, you'd be kind of bringing an elder statesman energy to the production, And also, I think you would, like me, gain a lot from just being around these talented young people and, you know, back in this environment. So thankfully he said yes. And then we had a really great shoot. I mean, we got super talented production people on to design and build and paint this set. We got really talented puppeteers, and Michael came in and just gave an incredible lead performance. And then I was so impressed with Aiden and Caleb that Aiden went from directing Monkey to ADing Kenneled, and Caleb did DIT on Kenneled, and then the two of them ended up working through the rest of. So Aiden ended up ADing not just Kenneled, but then also Thingy and Yellow Eyes. Caleb also stayed in Chicago. I mean, they were supposed to just come to Chicago for a month and do Monkey, and they ended up being in Chicago from January through July.
So it's like your crew right there. That's like your kind of your repeat crew.
It was everything I dreamed of. It was like exactly what I hoped would happen. And then similarly, Kevin Veselka, who DP'd Monkey, then also DP'd Kenneled and also DP'd Yellow Eyes. So we just got this rolling band of merry misfits who kind of dug the intensity of the production schedule. And then Ben Gozier, who's a really talented producer and VFX person, came on and co-produced with me, and then also headed up the VFX on the films. So that kind of was the core team. And then, you know, we tried to get a lot of the same actors to work on the projects, and, you know, really to utilize our resources as best as possible. And so super neat. So that's kind of how Monkey and Kenneled came into the mix. And then I just had a great experience working, you know, with both those teams and projects, and kind of primarily single location movies. So we did Monkey first, and then we were able to kind of borrow some tricks and apply them on Kenneled, and, you know, almost like a semester of college or something like that. You know, it's kind of like we had this class and everybody had to work on each other's projects, and so it's just great energy. I mean, by the end of the experience, I was very, very hungry to direct again and dive back in and get my hands dirty. But also, you know, I learned a lot. I mean, there's no better place to be than on the set of an independent film that you're not directing, to kind of just observe and witness. And my attitude towards producing was like that of parenting, you know, like I don't know if either of you have kids, but, you know, with my kids, they often are doing something where I'm like, that looks dangerous. Like someone might get hurt here, but also it looks like the kind of dangerous that I did as a kid, and then getting hurt from it was a very valuable lesson. You know, that's the kind of dumb thing that you only have to do once when you're like 8, and then you never have to do it again because it goes horribly wrong. And then there's other times where you're like, okay, somebody's going to break an arm. Like, I need to intervene as dad here. You know, this is dangerous to the degree that this
isn't a teachable moment. This is a hospital bill.
Yeah, exactly. This is going to be an ambulance call, not a like, I told you. So do the exact same mental calculus. I'm sitting there looking at these young filmmakers going, not the right way to do this, but also very, very good lesson to do it the wrong way right now, and definitely good on your first feature to fuck up like this and then never have to fuck up like this again. And then other times where I was like, okay, this is going to be a disaster. Like, we're going to go massively over schedule today. We're going to go massively over budget. Like, I actually, daddy needs to step in and say no. So I mostly tried to hang back. I tried to be, you know, supportive and, you know, really try and help the filmmakers make the movie they wanted to make. But also there were many, many times across the productions where I had to be like, I'm actually not going to allow you to do that. Like, I think it's a really bad idea. And in fact, this is the way we're going to do it. Like, I've just done this too many times and fucked up myself enough times that there's no reason we all need to go through this. Like, we're doing it this way. And, you know, whatever, I could feel the tension, the same tension that I would have as a young filmmaker, where somebody like older than me would, you know, kind of like say no or something like that, where you're kind of like, this guy doesn't get it. You know, he doesn't understand what
he doesn't see my vision. Yeah,
exactly. You know, so I was kind of like, okay, whatever. I'll play bad guy a little bit. You know, I could take it. But, you know, often it's kind of like after the fact that, you know, the filmmakers are able to be like, oh, okay, that's why Joe said not not to do it that way. Like, I get it.
Hindsight is always
And
2020, you know.
yeah, exactly. But you know, for the most part, I mean, I tried to let them run the show because you know, you do the goal was to have them elevate and learn, you know, sort of you know, we're obviously trying to make a great movie, but at the same time, I really do want to shape them into filmmakers, you know, like and you kind of got to run the show and, you know, take the bruises and figure things out. And then when it came to the editing, like the first cut of Monkey was 2.5 hours or something like that, you know, the classic, like,
Wow.
we've trimmed it down as tight as it possibly can go, you know. And I was like, well, I see easily about an hour that could come out of this, probably even a little more than an hour. They were like, what? No, there's no way. There's like, you know, maybe 20 minutes. I was like, I don't know, you guys. So, you know, it's like fun areas like that where, you know, later in the process, they're sort of sitting there with a, you know, 89-minute movie going like, oh my God, I can't believe the movie hours, you know, like, and those are the experiences we all have to go through, you know. It's you must, but you know, it's sort of like my role in this situation was kind of like, all right, I raised the money, I'm on the hook, I'm Roger Corman, you know, you're Joe Dante, and I got to crack the whip occasionally and, you know, come in here, and there's no way we're putting out a movie that's longer than 93 minutes. That's the longest I'm going to allow any of your films to be. You're not that good of filmmakers yet, you know, like
There's a great saying out there. I don't know who said it. It's like, if you get the first 90 minutes for free, everything else after that, you really have to earn it. And I think that there's a lot of truth in that, especially in genre films where they, you know, when I see a horror movie that's over 2 hours, I'm like, I trust you, but I don't know what you need that extra 30 minutes for.
I know. I totally agree. So it was a blast. I mean, you know, I love all the filmmakers that I worked with. You know, we're all very, very excited that the movies are going to go up on Screenbox. It's sort of a dream scenario, and I'm popping onto Letterboxd and seeing what people wrote about them. And you know, I have the feeling of like a proud parent or something like that. I'm like, all right, you guys, we did it. Like, good job.
You should.
Yeah,
you should.
You've definitely raised you've raised these young ones up through this process, and I think through that imparted some wisdom that, you know, I would imagine they won't forget, but I would hope that they cherish just as much as we do hearing it.
Yeah. It's been that way. It's been awesome, and you know, I want to work with all of them again. I mean, it really was, you know, it's like that cool. Now that we've done one together, just imagine how much better the next one will be. You know,
Right.
we trust each other more. You know, you'll trust me more as a producer. I'll trust you more as a filmmaker. Like, you know, a lot of this stuff can sort of roll. So I'm hoping there's another round, even if it's not done like the slate, though I would definitely do it again. I'm hoping with Aiden and Caleb and Jay and Jesse, the 4 directors that I worked with, that you know, this will not be the only time we work together in this capacity, because they all really are very, very talented and impressed me a lot. So I think we could push it even further next time out.
Well, Joe, this is one, they're lucky to have you, I'd say, kind of in their corner, shepherding them through this process.
Oh, yeah.
And also, you know, want to remind folks that one of these, KENNELD, can be watched now on Screenbox.
Yeah.
Monkey's Magic Merry-Go-Round is going to be coming to Screenbox on the 19th, and then Thingies as well as Yellow Eyes will be heading to Screenbox in the coming.
I think June and July, if I'm remembering correctly, something like that.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So
yeah, they're really cool. They're all very different from each other in a really fun way as well. I felt happy at the end of the experience that we were able to make these projects that all really did have their own unique team working across them. And I said to all my filmmakers, don't forget your old pal Joe when you're all big and famous, you know. And
they'll come to you for the limited VHS run, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, don't leave me in the dust.
Well, Joe, we could probably talk to you for the rest of the night, if I'm being honest, because we just there's so much good information, and also just you're so kind and giving with your own time. But as we kind of move to close out our time for today, you know, aside from the things you have come to Screenbox, is there anything else you want to shine a light on or give some props to?
Yeah, I have a new movie that I directed called The Sun Never Sets, and it is going to be released in theaters in seeming like late August, early September. That's kind of what IFC is looking at. But yeah, it's a really fun, not horror related at all. It's a romantic drama triangle movie with Dakota Fanning, Jake Johnson, and Corey Michael Smith as the sort of central three characters, and then
Nice.
Debbie Ryan is in it, and Anna Conkle from Pen 15, and Lamorne Morris, who was on New Girl with Jake, and really, really awesome cast. Very funny movie, very personal movie, and it premiered at South by Southwest in March, and will be coming to theaters later this year. So it's playing film festivals now, and I really love it. I'm very, very proud of the film, and excited to have a new one out there. It's been a second. I shifted over from features to TV, and been working in TV and producing. So my last, like, I did this small movie called Build the Wall, and that came out in 2020. That's like 52 minutes long, and kind of small thing I made with my friends. But my last feature we shot in 2015, and it came out in 2017. So it's been 10 years since I've had a movie out in the world. So I'm also just really excited to be back in the feature filmmaking game.
All right, sounds great.
We're
What a cast!
happy to have you. Yeah, we're happy to have you back in the feature, and it sounds like the rejuvenation of energy from working
Absolutely.
with these other filmmakers is like lit. It's almost like you're getting your second wind or third wind.
Oh yeah. No, it's totally true. I think if I had not done the horror slate, there's no way I would have been as fired up to make these films. I'm an old dog, can learn some new tricks from the young whippersnappers.
It's all mindset, right? If you're open to it, you'll learn something. But if you're not, you won't. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, I just want to say thank you again for your time. Want to remind everyone watching this that Kenneld's out now. Monkey's Magic Merry-Go-Round's coming in May 19th, and then you'll have other films coming June and July with Thingies and Yellow Eyes. And we just hope we can have another conversation with you, Joe, because we quite
yes, let's please do that. I would love to.
This was
Thank
great.
You so much for having me on. I appreciate your interest in the projects, and maybe at the sort of tail end of the slate when my other movies come out, we can talk again in August, something like that. That would be a ton of fun.
I would love that.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, thank you so much again, Joe. Talk to you in later in the coming months, and best of luck with these releases.
Okay, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Talk soon.
Great meeting you, Joe. Take care.
You too.